I appreciate you taking the time. I've been very fascinated by you, man. Obviously, I've connected early on with your brother,
Uh-huh.
and some of the some of the most interesting and fun conversations that I've had with any of the guests that I've had on this show, and really with anybody that I've just even encountered in life.
Right.
And I think I first came across you on an episode of the Ebb and Flow,
Right.
and I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
there's a bigger story here. And I think, coming from a family of, I've got three younger brothers myself.
Uh-huh.
Um, you guys just really, I don't know, I vibe with what you guys are putting out there. And so,
Yeah.
it's led me on to seeing some of the other stuff you've done, and a question really that I've been asking myself, and I ask all my friends, and I bother my wife and family members about, is, are we on the precipice of going down the wrong pathway with the temptation of technology? And is it something that, like, can be said as a joke, but is it really like, maybe it's time to start taking it serious? And I saw, How to Kill a White Man,
Right.
and it seemed like that was kind of the direction that you were leading on that. And I want to explore that with you as well. So
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot to say about that. For sure. Are we starting now? Are we going?
yeah, we can get her rolling. Yeah, I'll pick a spot, and
Yeah, yeah,
we'll make it go. But
absolutely.
with all of that being said, thank you for taking the time, my friend.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for having me here. 100%. Yeah. I think podcasts are amazing. To me, podcasts are the new journalists. To me, podcasters, actually. You guys are the new people that I can trust. And I think to me, it's why podcasters have been so prevalent in our society because, and I'm a journalist. Part of what I do is certainly journalism, so I know about this firsthand. When you're under the umbrella of an entity, you have to kind of play within that voice. You have to kind of play within that umbrella. So what I've loved about podcasters and podcasts is that it's independent. Of course, there's some that are represented that have bigger sponsors, and I think that's something that's going to change the podcasting game as we move forward. But I think podcasting is an amazing place to find independent voices that have the opportunity to be non-biased. So I appreciate what you're doing. Absolutely.
Well, that's awesome, man. And I agree wholeheartedly. Um, what were the media forms like? What did your family consume growing up? Like, when you turn on the television, how were you getting your news?
Oh man, it's funny. It depends on which family member's room you're in, you know. But it's such a uh see, I suppose you could say there's that interesting dynamic, right? Of the Democrats watch CNN, the Republicans watch Fox, right? So I think we were coming from a more quote unquote Democrat family, if you will, although I don't really buy into any of the party structure. Um, so it was maybe more like CNN on the television or MSNBC or something. And then, primarily it was news on television because I grew up prior to phones. And now I feel like news is all in the phone. I mean, what percentage of people, I'd be curious what the statistics are, the percentage of people that actually watch television news nowadays, as opposed to getting their news off of social media, which kind of goes along with where you started of, whatever technology is evolving as we evolve with it. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, we just so happen to be caught during one of those change cycles. It's no different than, I mean, Paul Revere had to ride on horseback to, give a message to our
Right.
founding fathers, right? So it's like everything evolves. And so it shouldn't be so surprising to everybody. It is very surprising. You can look around, everybody's like panicked and doesn't understand.
Mhm.
But I I don't know. I mean, it's like I think there's a bigger thing at play. I don't know how much I think it's like calculated by a puppet master at the top all at once, but I think the dominoes get knocked over, and this has been in the the recipe that we're eating right now has been in process for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. You talk about the calculation aspect of it, because something I bring up with my brother, because we have these types of conversations about who's pulling the strings, so to speak. And, I've said to him, because he'll say, and I think through our conversations, we've gotten deeper into this. So this is kind of a sort of retrospective point I'm making, but he would say, they are doing this. And I would say to him, well, who's they? What do you mean? Are you saying like there's an actual entity, like you're saying, like a puppet master who has malintent, who's trying to do something malicious to the populace? Or is this just, I would be really curious in the corporate boardrooms, you know, I would imagine, whether it's news or food, I would be curious, how could it be that there's like a consciously nefarious conversation going on? Or is it more unconscious, where they're like, well, hey, the soda really works and really attracts a lot of people, so let's just make money selling the soda.
You nailed it as far as how I see it. I don't think it's any one person calculating out perfectly this nefarious plan. I think it's a lot of people who are complacent
Right.
because they're financially rewarded at certain levels. You have a little bit more influence, you have a little bit more insight to things, and maybe it's just as bad, because if they collectively decided to change things, they probably could. But it's only the people who are benefiting from the game who have the power to change it.
Mhm.
And you have to be realistic when you look at the situation and ask yourself, how do we do the things that we are so proud of doing, but then can't seemingly get the fuck out of our own way for things like we're dealing with right now?
Mhm.
And that to me is just, there's no benefit to the people who can actually make things happen.
Right. My perspective on social media has changed. And wait, what was I gonna say there? You said something that um blew me up there. Whether it's, oh, okay, so this is what I was gonna say. Whether it's Generation Ass, which is a recent essay I published, whether it's How to Kill a White Man, which is a book of essays I published, or I've written a play that I'm working on producing once COVID really chills out, which is also about how technology affects us, particularly phones. Whether it's any of that, my my goal, let's say, with those writings in particular, and my writing now is quite different. I've kind of softened up and I've changed my tactic a little bit. But with those things, I just wanted to become more conscious, like you were saying in the beginning, about where we're going. You know, I also have this thing that I've been working on, this technology council. Why is there no entity in our government that counsels us on whether or not we we as the greater population, whether it's global or based in country or statewide, on whether or not we want to implement a certain technology. That's crazy to me, you know, that the new phone, I use the word thrust. These things have been thrust upon us. I was never asked if I wanted the new phone. You know, I think about when I was in high school, it was just the trajectory of cell phones in particular. It was just one new cell phone after the other being manipulated. Manipulated kind of makes it sound dark, but I suppose that's a word, you know, manipulated onto me as something I needed. And now we're in this place where the technology becomes so prevalent that you can barely function without it. I mean, who can really function without an iPhone these days? I mean, that's really that. I mean, you can, of course, I'm not saying you can. And that's kind of a dream of mine. I have you know, I would love to like sell a book, make $1 million, whatever the number is, and make $1 million, buy the farm, never have the phone again.
Yeah.
You know? But how do you feel about that? The stuff being thrown upon us, and we're just like, okay, I guess this is where we're moving, and then we can't see the wheel. We can't see the wheel that we're on. Before it's just like, wait, how did I get here? You
No,
know?
it's I I have an interesting perspective on it because I feel like that's a little bit of who I am and what my life has been, especially my adult professional life. I was never that person. I grew up in a really small town.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I didn't have aspirations growing up to be a business person. I had aspirations to like play in the World Series. You know what I mean? I wanted to be an athlete. And then as I got older and those dreams slowly fizzled out, it was because of all the things you're talking about, the what was thrust upon us. I could have at a young age decided those aren't the things that are important to me. But I think, like most young adults, I just did what I thought I was supposed to do. And then I took a job and I got bills. And at the end of the day, there's culpability on myself for those things, right? There's certainly, I can't make excuses, but it was the direction the river was flowing. And by the time I realized that's not what I wanted, it took a long time to be able to get into the path that I have, where I've been able to do this. I'm a partner in a coffee company. I do a lot of things on my own, but I still have to dip my toe into the corporate world and do consulting and do things because it's hard to make a clean break and still, unless to your point, you get that huge financial windfall
Right.
where you don't have to abide by it. But it's like you kind of have to conform a little bit to the system. And that's, I mean, sounds horrible to say it, but in order to even ride the momentum of society enough to get your own momentum. But then during that time, you can kind of fall off the wagon a little bit. You can get disillusioned by all the things that come along with that. You know, maybe you take a business trip somewhere and you have a good dinner, and then it's like, huh, okay, I enjoy this. I like this. Well, then you got to continue to feed that by doing all the things that you were running away from to begin with.
Right. Right. And you know, something that's really chilled this out for me is meditation.
Mm.
Something that has really allowed me to be in social media and not get totally freaked out by it and feel like it's black and white. Like I either have to be on it or I have to be completely off it and never see my phone again. You know, being in a kind of tantric balance with it, which was born out of a deeper meditation practice for me, I was able to see the virtue in social media, particularly. Or, you know, whatever you're saying, you know, to, you know, whatever you're saying about the system, whatever the system looks like to you,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but as it pertains to social media, you know, I've kind of changed my perspective a little bit with it because of my meditation practice. And, now I see how valuable it can be to help people, not just valuable in how I can make money, but valuable in how we can help people. There's something beautiful in it, in how it can accelerate enlightenment, if you will. I know enlightenment's a very big word, but also technology can accelerate things because we can go about burning away these seeds much faster. And what I mean by seeds is like the pornography seeds, the food seeds, the different kinds of ego seeds. We can see all the images. So I believe we have a faster trajectory of, becoming true. So, I don't really, I don't feel like it's all dark anymore, as maybe something like How to Kill a White Man positioned it. I'm playing more in the yin and yang these days with it.
It's interesting. What kind of meditation do you do?
I just do, I read some different, like I've done TM, I've done the Transcendental Meditation practice. There's certain teachers, there's this woman, Sally Kempton, there's Jack Cornfield. My mother has her master's in yoga science, and so I've been practicing yoga since I was maybe 11 or 12, particularly hatha yoga, but yeah, so I mean, I'm kind of all over the place in different realms of it, Zen, different kind of Zen and Buddhist, and different types of yoga practices. So I just kind of take it a la carte, but really it's just sitting for me, just sitting quietly, quieting the mind. I do a mantra based practice as well.
Your brother made an interesting comment the first time that I had him on the show, and he said, until you're able to generate some space between you and the world, you won't really be able to see things clearly. I may have screwed that up towards the end, but it stuck with me, at least enough to think about it.
And I love that.
Because we get so caught up into the weeds of life, and I think we need to be able to his point, separate yourself and kind of look at things from a 30,000 foot overview, if so to speak.
Yeah.
For enhanced perspective.
I love that. And that to me is born out of meditation. That to me, meditation provides that present moment awareness. It allows us the opportunity to be the witness. I just wrote this story. One thing I'd love for you to check out and people to check out is my new newsletter. It's called Reality Now, and I'm on Substack. You can do it for free, or there's like a paid subscription you can do. It's realitynow.substack.com. But one of the stories that I wrote was, I'm actually publishing it tomorrow, was having this experience of approaching somebody and them giving me the reaction I didn't want, so to speak. And then how I play out me reacting to them, which I believe is what you're saying, and what my brother was saying, was creating some space and then also being able to detach with love. I can detach, I can be interested in the outcome, but I have to detach from it, whether it's good or bad. I have to detach. That's none of my business. So that's how I would play that.
Man, it's interesting too, because I've had to learn that through just going through quote unquote life, you know what I mean? Relationships that require you to have to deal with things that way. And not even because you understand some methodology or this is the proper way to deal with it, but just almost like natural instinct. Presented with a challenge, how do I solve this interpersonal conflict that I have with a family member? And it's very interesting you say that, because I'm thinking of certain scenarios where
Right.
You have to sometimes detach yourself from that, because you
Right.
see a lot of people that make emotional decisions, whether it's in life, with family, with loved ones, or even at work. You know,
Mm,
I can see this translating over into the workplace for a lot of people.
right. Well, it's all relationships. I mean, it's all relationships. Relationships to me is the best. I mean, it's the best spiritual practice one could ask for. Whatever the relationship is, whether it's a relationship with myself, whether it's a relationship with a lover, whether it's with my parent, a friend, a worker, like you said. I mean, that's the place where we work this out. That's the place where we grow. I mean, if we didn't have relationships, what would be the point? What would we do? There would be nothing to do. This whole game is built on relationships. My relationship with God, God in here, you know, so that's the name of the game. Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand. I mean, I know you say you've taken a little bit more of an evolved approach to it, but when you say it that way, it does create some urgency when you look at the trajectory that we currently are on, because we're going in a way that's removing relationships from our lives. COVID has only just enhanced that,
Right.
which scares me, because I feel like, you know, maybe it's separate, but prior to this pandemic, I would have told you a big concern of mine in society in general is that we're, to your point, to use your term, being thrust in a direction that might not be the best for us in the long run, in that we get all this great benefit from technology and social media. And I too, like you, try to look at it from a positive. I mean, man, this is like the 54th episode of the podcast, and the majority of my guests I connect with on Instagram. And so
Beautiful.
you know, and I selfishly get a lot from these conversations. It's me asking the questions, and I try to just make it about that. And
Beautiful.
so, yeah, so it's like I have all the things that I'm fulfilling at my core, I can be thankful to social media for.
Yeah.
But I see how much it's also making a lot of people disconnected. And so when we talk about relationships being so important,
Mhm.
I get very fearful
Mm.
or I guess, to get back onto my point, I was fearful before COVID. And then when I see the response to COVID, and it's like, you know, missing holidays, we had 4th of July last year, and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's like, keep people away from each other and wear a mask and 6 feet of distance. And,
Right.
I, you know, I don't know. It's troubling.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, you know, in terms of what you said about the right outcome or the best outcome, you know, speaking karmically, I don't know what the best outcome is supposed to be. If that's supposed to be an asteroid hits the planet right now and blows it all up in half, I guess that's the outcome. If the outcome is supposed to be that, you know, some gas is leaked from Siberia and everybody's choked to death within a month, I guess that's the outcome. Or if the outcome is everybody, which is my belief in how we would get to some sort of utopia, is if everybody started meditating, you know, and we could talk about what I mean by meditating, but if everybody started meditating and we get to utopia, then, and that's the outcome, then that's great too. I mean, and that comes back to me kind of detaching from whatever it's supposed to be. I mean, in terms of, but also in terms of relationships, I mean, yes, this is bizarre. This is bizarre. This whole thing is bizarre. Talking to you on here, you know, it's bizarre. But we have to, I think we have to, which is why it's beautiful for you to bring that up and for us to always keep on our kind of human radar, is that we have to stay engaged with looking people in the eyes, which I don't know how, and you know, connecting physically in person. And I don't know how, I don't know, Justin, I'm curious what your take on that would be, how conscious people might be. It seems like they are, because if you talk to people, they'll say, oh man, I really miss having parties. I wish it could go back to normal, whatever normal is. You
Mhm.
know, it seems like people have it on their radar that being in person matters,
I
and it'll
think
never not matter.
I think some people do. I really do. I think there's a whole lot of other people who say that because it's the cool thing to say when you get on a Zoom call. It's like when they, and I, it's also to me primarily probably, it's primarily how were they living their lives before? If you didn't have a purpose before, you're probably not too bummed out about this.
Right.
You know, I stopped at I mean, stupid story, but I went to Chipotle
Uh-huh.
and I was trying to get a quick bite to eat after a workout. My
Right.
wife, my son, we like stop and there's like a sign when I walk in, they're only doing mobile orders. So then I go through this whole process. I order the food on this app. I pick
Right.
the time, put in my credit card information while I'm like standing in the lobby
Uh-huh.
area. I put it in and it's like, oh, your time slot's not available. Please select another one. It's like 30 minutes later. I leave. I was frustrated, had to take a second to breathe. And I was just like, how is this so ridiculous? Like, how can anybody want to give them business? And my
Uh-huh.
wife's like, look, there's people standing there. They're all waiting for their food, you know? And it kind of, I couldn't understand why people would be willing to deal with it. But then it's like, well, if you don't have a purpose and you don't have things that you're trying to get done, you just
Mhm.
go with the flow of it. And I think that's a lot of it. If you didn't have something before that these things mattered, you know, being around other people, if you just sat on your couch and played video games all day anyways, and this is perfect. You're more normal now.
Right. Right. Well, you know, to me that sort of talks to this thing of that I think we've all heard a lot of, like this sheep word, you know, where people are sheep, which I've never really liked or vibrated toward, because that feels to me like, and to me this is an interesting conversation about, are some people lost causes? Are some people karmically here to not really be present? Is that their journey? I would hope not, but you know, yeah, I think you're certainly right. It depends on what you know, how you were living before. I'm sure some people love this. Yeah, but see, then I don't know, because the heart is always honest, and I don't I you know, there's a reason depression, particularly depression, not anxiety, but depression causes things like cancer or heart disease, because you're alone. There's something about being alone that's never been good in the history of humanity. I mean, it's just never been the way it's been done healthily, you
Sure.
know?
Yeah. I don't disagree. I would argue though that those people, they were depressed and lonely and sad and were going to have that same fate anyways
Mm-hmm.
because they were alone before this. And so I guess that's where I'm getting at is they're already on that journey that we're all on. So like you and I, this is driving me nuts. You know, the moment that they said 2 weeks and we'll flatten the curve, I was like, come on, like 2 weeks. You
Right.
kidding me? Like I got things I want to do. I
Yeah.
can't go to the park without a mask on. Are
Yeah.
like why?
Where do you live?
I'm in the northern suburbs of Pittsburgh, PA,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and
Nice.
so I mean it was just madness for me, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
I would say I'm not in the most stringent of areas as far as people following those types of guidelines, but certainly enough where it was being noticed if you weren't. So that drove me nuts. I know there was people who it's like, well, I don't go out of my house anyways, and it's sad to me that people were living that way even before this.
Mhm.
But I do think, I really do think that there's a lot of folks whose lives really haven't had to change. They were ordering from Domino's, delivering it to their doorstep, ordering all their stuff from Amazon, and
Right.
playing Call of Duty 20 hours a day.
Right. Right. You know, you bring up food a lot. Food is curious to me because I think about how did we get in this place where we don't grow our own food? I mean, that right there is mind-blowingly bad. That's a terrible idea. I mean, we've managed it somehow. I mean, it's constantly a miracle to me that this thing keeps running. Like that's miraculous to me. You know, but it was interesting to see when COVID first started how the Whole Foods in my town was completely wiped out. I mean, that just shows you how fragile this thing is. I mean, but how did we get to this place where you can't grow food? I mean, I believe it came from like the 50s and the kind of the nuclear home and canned goods and TV dinners. So slowly we moved away from farming. But I mean, man, there's so many fucking different levels to, you know, and that's technology. That's technology. You know, food, TV dinners is technology. Technology isn't only phones and computers. That's a technology that was thrust upon people, and then certain people, you know, it's like in India with these GMO seeds. I can't remember the woman's name, but she's an incredible activist. But she talks about how a lot of these farmers in India are killing themselves because they are not allowed to keep their farms. I mean, it's been their lifeblood forever. It's how it's their spirituality. It's how they've stayed alive. You know, so kind of, you know, tangentially to this point, the more we get away from our humanity, what's really going to happen? I mean, it was so, excuse me for just going on. I don't cut me off whenever. But, you know, something that was fascinating to me, like particularly about the Super Bowl, you know, those commercials, these like deep technology commercials of like the one commercial that was interesting to me was the self-driving car. And this is where something like the Technology Council would come in. Do we want a self-driving car? Or is that just going to end up in the parking lot? Is that the whole deal here? Is there any council that said the new thing is self-driving cars and we're just going to be okay with that? You know, because what comes after self-driving cars? Then it's flying cars. I mean, it's like I had such a trippy experience recently because I read sci-fi, particularly Philip K. Dick. And it's like sci-fi, science fiction elements of reality kind of just end up here. You know, it's never like, it's predictable within the framework of the novel, but in terms of like the reality, they just show up. You know, I was standing on a street corner one day, this electric car is flying by, this woman, or, you know, the driver's got a mask on and sunglasses. I can't see them. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, and a phone. And I'm like, 5 years ago, this would have been complete science fiction.
I
So,
talk about this all the time, and I think about it in, okay, given that's what the last 10, 15, 20 years have been, because how old are you?
I'm 30. I'm
You're
30.
30. Okay, so I'm 34.
Right.
So we're right there. I lived enough in a world before the internet, or I guess at least before consumer internet,
Yeah.
before, you know, computers were in everybody's homes, before cell phones were in everybody's pockets. You know, it wasn't like that. And then going into middle school, my parents got a cell phone. You know,
Mhm.
you'd take it on your, you know, school field trips and call mom and dad when you got close for them to come and pick you up. It
Right.
and it like overnight, now everything in my entire life is on this thing, you
Yeah.
know, which is scary because the vulnerability, number one,
Mhm.
the and then where's it going? Where are we going to be in 10 years? Because we developed in 10 or 15 years where we are today
Mhm.
with the technology of the past. So 10 to 15 years of tomorrow is not the same progress as 10 to 15 years of our past. It's going to be much more accelerated.
It's unimaginable. I mean, it's unimaginable. Basically, anything you could imagine could potentially be possible. Money could be orbs that just flow through the air, that float into your third eye, if you even have a third eye anymore. This is why, I think there could potentially be a rift. My brother and I talk about this a lot. It's not really, and I write about this in one particular chapter in How to Kill a White Man called Fool's Monologue, where I call it a spiritual war. This isn't really wars with guns, not to say that that's not possible, but I think there could potentially be a rift between the nature people, the kind of nature ecstatics, and the technology ecstatics. The people that are like, okay, I appreciate technology, which I do, but I can't go there. I can't go that far. I need to keep grounded just a little bit. And it's funny, I was thinking of this the other day, hiking here. There's just this like simple hike. It's called Fryman Canyon. It's more of like a nice walk hike. And I'm always fascinated. It's like, why do we always come back here? It's so funny. We've got all of these amenities, every kind of food that you could possibly imagine that could taste so impossibly good, every sort of orgasmic experience at your fingertips, yet we still go hike. So there's something to be said for that. There's some meditative blue sphere. There's this particular yoga practice, Muktananda. He brings this kind of blue orb analogy into the game, where that doesn't go away. That's like in us naturally, where we need that kind of silent space to come back. It's like charging your phone, if you will, to use a technology analogy. Isn't that interesting to you that we still have to go, like you still have to go to the park, and I still had to go to the park today and work out,
Mm-hmm. Oh, I feel tremendous when I'm outside. And there was not to go back again, like I said, I had so many interesting conversations with your brother, but he
Yeah.
shared with me an interesting study, and I think it may have been a book. You might be familiar with it, with a Japanese study where they looked at people who were exposed to greenery and how that impacted their happiness. It very interesting,
Yeah, yeah, it is.
And I think, does it have something to do with the terpenes as well that are in plants? Like, I'm
God,
wondering if there's any type of organic element to it as well. Like,
there's a great book. I read it a while ago. I feel like I have to read it again. Eb and I talked about it on the podcast. It won the Nobel Prize, I believe, like in 68 or something, and it's still relevant. It's called So Human and Animal. So Human and Animal. It's by this guy, Rene Dubos, Dubos. And he talks a lot about, not having measures to keep nature intact. He talks about the rape of nature. He talks about greenery, like seeing the color green and how important that is to us. I mean, I'm endlessly fascinated at why I don't see billionaires' names around the country setting up parks. How do you have so much money? Even if you were a millionaire, how do you have so much money and not create a park? I mean, how is that not in your consciousness? That's just kind of baffling to me. That doesn't make any sense. That must be a reality where your green is taken care of. There's these blacktop cities. I mean, these cities where people don't have green. I would imagine cities where crime rates are high, they totally lack nature. They totally lack parks. And nature is meditation. I mean, meditation is not just sitting down and closing your eyes and listening to your breath. I mean, meditation can be many different things.
mm-hmm.
So, how do you feel about having a child? I mean, what is your take on having a child? I'm curious, how old is your child? And because Eb has a 10-year-old, and it's fascinating to watch her and how they have to do this dance of how much technology she gets. I mean, it's amazing,
Yeah. So interesting, right? My son is 19 months old right now. So
Okay.
he's just a little guy. My wife's
Right.
actually pregnant with number two.
Oh,
So
nice. Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very exciting times, but I notice it even now. Like first and foremost, I do think about it, and I think about it quite often. How will we balance that? Because to what we said earlier, there is just a framework of life, and my ultimate goal would be that I'm able to provide absolutely everything, encompass it all, and allow him to not have to have those things thrust upon him.
Mm.
But I'm also a realist, and I know that that's a really hard thing to commit to. And so, you know, I think number one is being honest. I technology brings such an interesting reality where we can connect with so many different people, both positive and negative, right? So if you are dishonest to your kids,
Hmm.
they see through that shit,
Hmm.
and you're not going to be trusted by them.
Hmm.
And you may actually have their best interest at hand, and they're looking past that because you've tried to be sneaky and you're overly strict, you're not honest, you don't tell them about life. I was very fortunate. I had parents who were very honest with me. They didn't hide things. Sometimes I probably was exposed to way too much,
Mm.
and it makes for fun stories now. But I'm very grateful for that because I knew anything my mom and dad told me, if they said it to me, they meant it, and I should listen because they never sugarcoated and tried to not treat me as an adult. And
Hmm.
so that's the number one thing that I'm going to do because I think that will allow me to be able to have the types of conversations about technology and how they should approach it, and to be
Hmm.
able to have a conversation where they hear me and trust me to try to follow that to the best of their ability.
Right. Right.
That's easier said than done, probably.
Exactly. Exactly.
Check back in like 15 years and ask me how that's going.
Exactly. Something I certainly don't want to get into talking about my brother's child, but just briefly, I can see how, first of all, the honesty is amazing. I mean, what are we without being honest? That's just a linchpin of sanity, and decency. But you know, I can see how if you're in a community, this is why something like, let's say, an ashram is important. I believe an ashram would be characterized as kind of like a Indian community, like a Hindu community, not a cult, but I guess you could say a cult too. Not that an ashram is a cult, but like the aspect of community is important because, like, if one child is not allowed the phone, but then her friend's parents allow her the phone, then you're kind of fucked. It's like, well, how do you play that then? Because are you going to say, so you can't participate? Then she's going to resent you. I mean, it's just yeah,
Minefield.
yeah, it's totally a minefield. Totally a minefield. Yeah, man.
Well, and the strange and unique thing about this is we're having a conversation. I'm like, I wonder how I'm going to monitor my son's phone when he's 15. And then I like stop dead in that thought. And I'm like, I'm gonna be monitoring something I don't even know
Yeah,
exists right now, like a phone. He's
there
gonna be like,
might
what the fuck is a phone, man? He's like, I've got this Neuralink thing and I'm
right,
reading
brother.
people's mind. You're gonna tell me I can't do that, Dad?
Yeah,
I'm reading everybody's mind. I'm playing the
exactly.
sideline. I mean,
There might be six of you walking around. Who knows?
yeah.
God knows what it'll be in 10 years.
So
So no, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna ask you about the new book
Yeah.
with your brother, but certainly if there was something else you wanted to cover before we went into that.
I was gonna say one thing about social media, and the challenge for me is or I think the challenge for a lot of people, particularly young people, is the ego play, you know, And then the ego play mixed with drugs, like particularly weed, and this is me speaking from personal experience, and maybe not everybody is as neurotic as I have been, but you know there's the story of Narcissus, who, the basic story is I think there's a lot of different kind of renditions of the story, but the one I go with for right now is that he goes up to the lake and he's beautiful. And to me, who isn't beautiful? So I don't think it's about being beautiful, but he looks into this dark black lake and he gets so transfixed by his reflection that he falls in and drowns. And I mean, it's interesting that the phone, like particularly that show, is called Black Mirror. The phone is this black mirror. And I think selfies are so odd. If you read Generation Ass, there's a reason, you could read that and think I was insane or like philosophically, you know, philosophically onto something. It could really cut either way, I feel like, but there's a reason I center the characters as apes. If you look at people as apes, which we are, which we evolve from, it's a much different experience than coming from this kind of evolutionarily egocentric point of view where we're not apes anymore, like we've lost our animal. But if you look at us from that way, it's a very strange thing, because we're really just trying to figure out what this is. And we can do this thing with this phone where we take this photo of ourselves and kind of play this really strange, bizarre dance with our animal nature through this technology. And I think not everybody is, and I was like this, if you're more insecure, it might be harder to engage in a healthy way with with technology, particularly social media, which a lot of it is engaging with your face.
What do you do things for, well, meditation, I would imagine, is going to
Yeah.
answer this question, but aside from meditation, mindless things, right? Because I would, the pushback that I would get if I challenge somebody on why are you just aimlessly scrolling through Instagram is, it's just I'm relaxing. I've worked hard all day. I'm just kind of sitting down and doing that.
Mhm.
I would choose to try to, grab a guitar, you sit down and stimulate myself that way, but that's me, right? So, I mean, how are you, without trying to leverage social media, which a lot of people do, how are you getting that much needed time to just chill?
I read. I mean, I read. I have to, I make a note of reading to balance it out. Reading, exercising, meditating, praying. I have to, because I can feel it in my mind, particularly too. I can actually feel it in my third eye. I can feel if I'm on Instagram too much, that I have to chill the third eye out. I have to chill this pineal gland, if we want to be more scientific, out with reading, particularly. And reading to me is kind of like the complete opposite, the opposite coin of doing something like Instagram. I also I'm certainly a different case, because I don't go to work per se and like do the job for 8 hours and then come home and chill. I'm a creator, if you will. So my job, I kind of flow differently. So I probably have a different experience. But see, that kind of comes back to making people conscious of what you're doing on it. What are you doing on it? How are you engaging in it? I think that's, yeah, that comes back to that.
It's
So
probably a more delicate way of saying it than how I present it to my family members.
yeah.
Like, hey, how are you engaging in it? How are you spending your time? I'm a little bit more blunt
Yeah.
with how I'm probably wording that.
Right, right, right.
And
But that,
probably
but
because I'm you know what it probably is? It's probably because I know that I spend more time than I would like to admit doing pointless things on there. And so it's a little bit of my own insecurities and defensiveness
Mhm.
where I have some justification and I know that I have an argument because I do a lot of productive things, but
Right,
the moment that I see that my armor could be exposed, I try to get ahead of that and really
right.
hammer somebody.
Yeah, but I mean, let's think about different advents in technology, like particularly television. I wasn't around when I don't think you were either, when television was the hot new thing. Imagine how much time people spent watching television. It had to have been correlative to the amount of time we spend on social media, because nobody sits down and watches television nowadays for 6 hours a day, but you would sit down and look at your phone for 6 hours a day. So, how is that different? So maybe this isn't really anything new. Maybe it's just we've just switched mediums.
How far do you think this goes, especially considering, I mean, have you seen the video that Elon Musk released of the ape
Mhm.
playing Pong with
No,
Neuralink?
no.
So they released a video of a chimpanzee. I think it
Uh-huh.
was a chimpanzee that was, they said they implanted Neuralink into the
Uh-huh.
chimp and it was playing Pong on a television and the
Right.
controller was the brain. They were thinking of the move and controlling the paddle with their brain.
Yeah, I mean, well, see, that comes back to my spiritual war, spiritual rift, where I believe that there's going to be people, and we can see it today. Something perfect example is something like a vaccine. There's people that don't believe in getting a vaccine. There's people that believe in getting a vaccine. I suppose technology in a way is a little bit more mysterious because it's not exactly a physical thing, but something like Neuralink, where it is actually being physically inserted into you. I feel like that step in technology is so drastic in a way that there would be people that would say this is gone too far, and then there would be people that would line up for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not somebody that would want Neuralink. I know my brother is not somebody that would ever want Neuralink. You know, something inserted into your skull. I know it's also something he would never want his daughter to have. Excuse me, I don't want to speak about his daughter, but or if you would want your child to have. So do you feel me on that? How there
Yeah.
might be certain levels of technology that are just a little bit too beyond the pale?
You bring up that's kind of where I'm glad that we got here because Neuralink to me is that fork in the road.
Mm.
It's, do we tune in to 2050 and it's kind of like the beginning of Terminator, not that it's all doom and gloom, but that there's two different civilizations,
Right.
because I think at first they could coexist, right? But then at some point that technology exponentially continues to grow and the difference between the two, I, I would even, I mean, I'm going to really bug you out, right? But has it already happened? And are we just a fragment of something that's already happened? When we sit here and talk about alien civilizations possibly existing, are
Uh,
alien civilizations a branch off of human civilization that was hey, we're going to go with the technology. And then our ancestors were the ones who stuck behind and continued to slowly evolve. But they evolved at an exponential rate because they chose technology. Well, now the remaining people, us, we're now catching to this new precipice and the new fork in the road, and that's going to split off.
right.
And I mean, when you think about how long the universe has, I mean, it's the things that we're talking about could have happened so many times over that
Right.
you couldn't count, let alone once.
Yeah. I mean, so aliens and has it already happened? I was acting before you brought up whether or not it's already happened. Something I was going to say that I find interesting is like the difference between a liberal and a conservative. I don't identify with any of it. I'm anti-party. I believe I'm moving toward balance. I'm not interested in anything that has to do with division. I think it's asinine that our whole political system is built on division, where there's a red team and a blue team. I don't care if you're on the blue or the red team, whatever, that's cool. I love it. Do what you got to do. But I think it's interesting how the conservative people are a little bit more nature oriented. Like they're the hunters. Like they kind of they identify as like the military. They're they would be anti-vaccine, so to speak. They're more like my body, even though of course you bring the abortion conversation, and that just goes in a different direction because of their religious beliefs. So I feel like it, maybe it is bubbling in a way, and it already kind of is there to a certain degree. You know, because also, for instance, like somebody like a liberal that's like very much like pro vaccine, it's like that type of person to me might be more willing to get something like Neuralink, because it's another stage of comfort. It's another level of take care of me. I mean, this is a very vast conversation, but to the point of has it already happened? And I don't know exactly what you meant by that, but I think there's definitely rifts in society and how we want to live moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, right? The frustration that you're just like, hey, I never asked for this phone. I'm not asking for electric cars, but is inserting some sort of computer chip in the human brain, is that the thing that takes it too far and that makes us say, okay, look, we need to coexist, but we can't do it in the same quote unquote civilization? Because I mean, they're talking about Neuralink would give you and I the ability to have a conversation without speaking. And, maybe being able to go to Japan and be able to hear what they say and it computer generate your response in a language that you don't even need to learn how to speak. And
I
so
mean
how does that become a fair reality where people who want,
right.
I mean, it's not even fathomable, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean that's funny because there's gurus and mystics in India and throughout history that can do that already. They've just taken the longer route of sitting in meditation, practicing certain ascetic, types of techniques where they can read your mind, and they have been to Mars and they have visitations with aliens. I believe that works, but I don't think anybody that's developing Neuralink is I don't know. I don't know how much they're thinking about how, why not actually tap into the nature given potential that's already in there. Why do we need to kind of induce this thing?
It's scary. I'm not going to lie, because every time I feel like, every other situation that's ever occurred in life, I theoretically could have stopped thinking about it and life would have went on.
Uh-huh.
And it probably still would if I stopped thinking about this. But I don't know. We're at a very, very strange point in time of human existence.
Yeah, and this is partially why I'm interested in something like a technology council. And this is where back to the word community comes in. If the whole thing is just put upon us And suddenly I pick up my phone and I can't use my phone unless I attach it to my face where they get the facial recognition technology. I'm being manipulated into using it a way that I don't want to use it. Like, I don't like the thing where I hold my phone up and I use the face technology to unlock it. Like, I don't have that on my phone. And it's fine if people do, but like something like that, you know, there's no conversation to me between the layman and the person that's developing the technology about whether we want it. Where is that bridge? There's no bridge.
Well, and because there could be advancement and just a lot to your point, like, hey, look, if you want to use a phone, use it. But what happens is the baseline increases and doesn't stay there for the people who don't want to advance. So it's like, oh, it's just like technology, right? Oh, you don't have X, Y, or Z operating system. You can't even use these applications anymore because you didn't update. And so, to your point, are we on a path where you're forced to use your phone and facial recognition technology and God knows what else if you even want to access your bank account in a timely manner? Otherwise, hey, you can still get your money, but it's going to take you X amount of time. It's going to be a big giant pain in the ass. And if you want to function in civilization, you're just going to do it the way that we want you to do it.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what's happened.
Yeah.
That's what's happened because we've had no counsel. We've had no conversation. And I mean, that's exactly it. That's exactly what it is.
I'm going to I keep thinking of this and I've been hesitant to bring it up because I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression, but I think there's a valid, and it's probably why the movie did so well, but you're familiar with Ted Kaczynski, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm familiar with it enough to understand what I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but his
Right.
whole, his whole problem, right? He did a lot of horrible, fucked up shit.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he was speaking out against what we're living through right now. Whether
Right.
anybody wants to admit that or not,
Yeah.
he was a wacky guy. He did a lot of crazy shit, but his whole point was we're going down a road
Right.
that is very dangerous for civilization. And I had somebody tell me something that really made me stop in my tracks
Uh-huh.
because we were talking about this, which is why I bring it up. And he said, I don't know exactly how many people were killed, maimed, injured in all of the horrible acts that he did. And then the family members of those people who have the consequences of that. But he said, I know it's far, far less than the amount of people who have been impacted negatively by all the things that he was trying to stop
Mhm.
since he did. And he said, just really think about that for a second, ask who the real villain is.
Mhm.
And that's hard for me because I would never want that to happen to anybody. And I certainly don't think that the way he went about trying to do what he did was right. But I had to stop and think because that was a very powerful thing for him to say. And I can't necessarily say I disagree with the overall premise. I don't agree with what he did, but I don't disagree with a lot more people were hurt with what he was trying to stop.
Right. Right. With his manifesto. I haven't read the whole thing. I actually have it in kind of queued up to read the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, I think there's better ways. This is one case, having these conversations to go about um, you know, go about those things. Where are we going? Where are we going?
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of the beauty, that is the beauty of the other side of technology, particularly podcasts and something like Instagram, is that these independent medias are the most powerful entities. So all voices can get a say, which can be dicey, of course, because not everybody is, there could be idiots out there. Um, there are idiots out there, and that's okay. They're not always going to be idiots, but you know, Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said. I want to say something about the idiot thing. This guy I really like, Osho, you know, they did that documentary on him called Wild Wild Country. And it kind of made him, I've brought him up to, and I read a lot of his stuff and listen to him a lot. And I've had people say to me, oh, he's that cult leader, right? And that's sort of, um, that series makes it seem like a cult, but Osho is really to me, one of the great thinkers of the, you know, 21st century ever. If you read his stuff, he's phenomenal. But something he would say was the word idiot, and I would always listen to that. And it was the one thing that I didn't really vibe with. I thought, why is this sage saying the word idiot? Like if he didn't call people idiots, like he would just really be, really be there. And then I was like, oh no. First of all, me thinking there aren't in the world is phony holy. I'm full of shit if I think that everybody is just there already. But I don't know why I bring that up. I just wanted to clarify on the idiot bit, and I think it's everybody's doing the best they can at their own level of awareness. Everybody is doing the best they can. Blowing up a fucking building is not really going to help. It's certainly going to make a statement, but I don't think it's going to help. Whatever help means, I don't think that's a good idea at all. But it is interesting that guy, his manifesto was based around this stuff. Based around, where is technology going and we need to stop it. I don't really know the history of him, like if he was a farmer or an earth person, or like if his family was, or
He was actually pulled into the Harvard LSD studies.
oh, okay.
And
Okay.
so there's a lot of interesting things you can read about him where he was selected, I believe in the 60s. He was a very intelligent guy. And I've even heard theories, and I don't know how much I subscribe to them, that he was an asset, some sort of the government, because of these studies and because of his
Uh-huh.
connections to them. But, either
Right.
way, I think he had an insight that, again, to your point, like, horrible person to do what he did, and it didn't accomplish anything. At the end of the day, it probably was way more detrimental. It definitely was. But the insight that he had, uh, you know, I couldn't argue the simple fact that he laid in front of me, which was that there's been a lot of destruction by the things that he was trying to illuminate, albeit he did it in the wrong way. Um,
Yeah.
and it
Well,
stopped me.
yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I wrote something like How to Kill a White Man was because everybody was talking about it, and everybody is talking about it, and everybody is having these conversations to a degree. It's just how conscious or ignorant they are choosing to be about it. You know, how many times do you sit down in a coffee shop and you hear whispers at the table over talking about how do I go about getting more followers, or how do I navigate social media? I mean, I was just inundated with hearing those conversations. And then, being a journalist, I would, slip in, how do you feel about Instagram? Like, what's your thoughts on that? And I kept getting back at me kind of exactly what I was feeling. Like, it doesn't feel right, but then they would go off and participate in it how they would participate in it. But these are things that people are feeling. I don't think there's anybody that's not feeling it. It's just how ignorant or conscious you want to be.
Yeah.
And then how do we move from there? That what we were talking about before, that kind of present moment awareness of that I think gets deeper. The more we practice, particularly in meditation, we get closer to the truth of what the present moment is. It's not that we don't have the present moment, but we're clouded by what we think the present moment's supposed to be, you know? So
It's a great way to look at it.
yeah. You know, similar to your experience of looking at the phone a while ago, trying to figure out what the Instagram message was going to be, and then evolving to this place where you're like, oh, I know what the message is going to be. This is the message. This is how I'm going to do this. I mean, there might be some, you know.
Yeah. Oh, there's certainly manipulation to that, but it's less about how I'm perceived. I was very like, oh, well, what are people going to think? At this point, it's like I'm going to, if I'm going to use this tool, it's going to be because I want to share the most recent episode so that people can hear it. And
Yeah.
so whether that's popular, not popular, pissing people off, I mean, if you like it, great. If you don't, scroll past it. Where
Yeah.
before I was like, how do I get them to stop on me
Uh-huh.
and pay attention to what I'm doing? Because
Yeah.
I deep down inside needed that validation that what I was doing was even right. And now I don't care if anybody watches it. I don't care if everybody who does hates it. I mean, yeah, I'll take that feedback and I'll try to look at it constructively. But quite honestly, that's whatever it is in the moment. That's what it is.
Right. I have this beautiful thing with Ebb we've been doing lately where it only takes one. You know, I was listening to this podcast. I was listening to this meditation teacher. This guy's really prominent meditation teacher. His name's Jack Cornfield. I'm scheduled to interview him at some point soon, but I watched one of his talks on Zoom, and there was like 1,500 people there, you know, because I could see the number of audience members for some reason. And I said to Ebb, that my brother, the next day, I said, man, it was such a great talk, but there were only 1,500 people there. And Ebb went, man, if there was one person there, that's enough. Just all he would need is one person to hear that message, and that could ripple out into a million, you know? So I'm just piggybacking off of your point of whatever it's supposed to be. It might just be one person reading it and it shifts their life. What was it? The Tupac thing where Tupac said, I might not, I think it was Tupac. It sounds like Gandhi. I mean, it's the same thing, I guess. You know, I might, well, not exactly, but you know, I may not be the person that changes the world, but I'm definitely going to inspire the person that will. So, you know, I definitely at least have a chance to inspire the person that will. And I think that's beautiful, you know?
So, man,
Yeah.
if everybody took that, even a portion of that mentality with them through their day-to-day lives, civilization would be such a better place. Because I think back to what we originally started with, I don't think a whole lot of people have nefarious, some people do, but not everybody. I think the majority of people who are doing wrong, quote unquote wrong, is
Right.
they're just complacent.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I appreciated this conversation, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely, man. It's great convo. Yeah.
So, where can everybody who's listening to this, where can they go and find all your work? Because I know I snagged the most recent book on Amazon.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on that. Um, you got The Life Worth Dying For?
Yeah. I'm taking a trip here in a couple of weeks to Atlanta. So
Sweet.
I've got some reading time. That's usually when I
Nice.
read, is when I'm traveling. So,
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I love that, man. Um, you know, the things that are available, you know, I guess if you go to my Instagram, it's I think if you just search Augustus Britton, my name, and then my handle thing is self-love, but it's with a 5 and a 3. So I don't know if you can write that out. But you know, I've got this essay out, Generation Ass, that's on Amazon. How to Kill a White Man is on Amazon. We're working on turning How to Kill a White Man into a series. We just shot the first episode. It just premiered in Colombia and London, which is really cool. We're working on selling the whole thing as a series. And I act in it. Actually, I wrote it and then I act in it just because it just made sense for me to play the guy. And then I'm building this newsletter. I'm excited. I'm really excited about this newsletter because I feel like it's a great place for me to just do my kind of independent journalism. It's realitynow.substack.com. And there's a free version, there's a $5 a month version. I think there's a $40 a year version. Any version subscribers get, I'm excited about. So those are the main things. I have a novel that I'm finishing now about when I lived in Texas. I lived in Marfa, Texas. Strange kind of Brooklyn. I'll have to come back on the show when that comes out.
Please do.
Yeah, trippy novel. So yeah, I'm building some things with my writing. So yeah, but Reality Now, and then my Instagram, there's like links to my writing on there. So yeah, brother.
Eternally grateful, man. I appreciate it a lot, you coming on here, and I hope it's the first of many.
Yeah.
I don't plan on stopping this anytime soon. So
No, don't, man. This is where it's at. This is it. Conversations. We need this.
yes, we do.
But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, brother. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, much love. Bye.